Hello everyone, welcome back to UGC Net English classes. In the last class we had our topic, the Old English poem Beowulf. Today we are going to discuss the biography of Geoffrey Chaucer, the Middle English period writer Geoffrey Chaucer. When we speak from the context of English literature, we know that Geoffrey Chaucer is famous. More than any other works, he is famous for his work, The Canterbury Tales. And now let's discuss the main ideas regarding the writer Geoffrey Chaucer. So Geoffrey Chaucer was born in 1340 or probably in 1345, and he passed away in 1400. Geoffrey Chaucer is called the morning star of the Renaissance. The morning star of the Renaissance. We know that he is not a Renaissance period writer. Chaucer is not a Renaissance period writer. He was a Middle English period writer, not Renaissance, because we know Renaissance period. English Renaissance starts from which period? From 1500, and Chaucer passed away in 1400. But he is called the morning star of the Renaissance. So there is another person who is called the morning star of Reformation. So don't get confused. The morning star of Reformation is John Wycliffe. But the morning star of Renaissance is Geoffrey Chaucer. So this means that though he was a Middle English period writer, he showed some tendency to improve the language, and he showed the tendency of modern English. So he is called the morning star of Renaissance. He is also called the father of English literature and also the father of English poetry. So remember, father of English literature and father of English poetry is Geoffrey Chaucer. And it was John Dryden, the famous critic and the famous writer, dramatist, John Dryden, who called Chaucer the father of English poetry. So don't forget, it was John Dryden who called Geoffrey Chaucer the father of English poetry. And Dryden did this in his work, in his preface to his book, Fables, Ancient and Modern. So in his preface to Fables, John Dryden calls him the father of English poetry. Now let's see what Matthew Arnold has to say regarding Chaucer. So Matthew Arnold says in the work, The Story of Poetry, Matthew Arnold's work, The Story of Poetry, praises Chaucer with the words, with Chaucer is born our real poetry. So according to Matthew Arnold, with Chaucer is born our real poetry. And Matthew Arnold also calls him the well of English undefiled. So according to Matthew Arnold, Chaucer is the well of English undefiled. Now let's analyze the three periods of Chaucer's writing career. The first period, the French, then second Italian, and the third, the English period. So first period, the French period till 1372. This means he was interested towards French literature. and he translated some French works into English. And a second period, the Italian period, that lasts till 1385, or we can say 1386 also. So Italian period till 1385 or 1386. So he visited Italy and I was impressed with the Italian writers. And his style of writing started to adapt the style of Italian writers. And it's the last period, the English period. That is till his death, 1400. So during the English period, he came out with his most famous work, the Canterbury Tales. Now moving on to the next point. Chaucer lived during the three rulers. He lived during the three rulers, Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. Especially he was born during the time of Edward III's reign, and he lived during the reign of Richard II, and he passed away when Henry IV ascended the throne. So he lived during the three rulers, Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. And his first poem was A Prayer to Virgin ABC. A Prayer to Virgin ABC. Now Chaucer is famous for a type of stanza that is called Chaucerian stanza, or the rhyme royal or royal rhyme. It is called so because after Chaucer introduced this rhyme, it was used by King James I of Scotland. So King James I used this after Chaucer introduced this rhyme scheme. So this rhyme scheme was introduced by Chaucer, and it consists of 7 lines. 7 lines in a rhyme scheme include A, B, B, C, C. So the rhyme scheme of Chaucerian stanza or rhyme royal is A, B, B, C, C. Now let's be familiar with some of Chaucer's contemporary writers. Some of the writers who were Chaucer's contemporaries include John Barber, John Gower, John Wycliffe, John Mandeville, William Langland, etc. So remember 4 Johns: John Barber, John Gower, John Wycliffe, John Mandeville, and William Langland. Chaucer was born in London. He was the son of John Chaucer and Agnes Copton. John Chaucer and Agnes Copton. His father was a vintner. Vintner means a wine merchant. His father was a wine merchant. And Chaucer married Philippa Rout. Philippa Rout was the wife of Geoffrey Chaucer. He had about 3 children: Thomas Chaucer, Louis Chaucer, and Elizabeth Chaucer. And he was the first writer to be buried in the Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. So Chaucer was the writer to be buried in the Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. And he maintained a career in the civil service. Basically, he was, a civil servant. Besides being a poet, he was a civil servant. And Chaucer wrote in the Middle English language. Especially he wrote in the East Midland dialect of the Middle English. So remember, East Midland dialect. His most famous work, as we know, the Canterbury Tales, that was written around 1400. It is not a finished work. The work is incomplete because of his death. It is said that Chaucer started his work on his most ambitious poem, the Canterbury Tales, in the early 1380s, 1380s. Probably, after 1385. We can say it's around 1380. And Thomas Huxley, the famous writer Thomas Huxley, hailed him as the first finder of our fair language. So Thomas Huxley calls him as the first finder of our fair language. These are many very, very important points you should remember. And Chaucer's patron was John of Gaunt. So Chaucer, patron means the one who supported him, someone who supports an artist. Even financially can be called a patron. So his patron was John of Gaunt. So John of Gaunt patronized Chaucer, the writer Chaucer, and Chaucer's first major work was the Book of the Duchess, which was an elegy for Blanche of Lancaster, John of Gaunt's first wife, who died in 1368. So Chaucer's first major poem was an elegy, a mourning poem that was written for the for the deceased wife of his patron, John of Gaunt. So John of Gaunt's wife, Blanche of Lancaster. And the mourning poem was titled The Book of the Duchess. And it chooses another work, another short poem, Fortune. Fortune is a short poem written by Chaucer, and that work also refers to Blanche of Lancaster. The wife of John of Gaunt, Chaucer's patron. And besides, proving his literary talents, he also gained fame as a philosopher, or we can say as an astronomer, when he went on to compose the scientific work titled A Treatise on the Astrolabe. So a treatise on the astrolabe. He wrote this work for his 10-year-old son, Louis Chaucer. So for his son, he wrote an astrological work that was titled A Treatise on the Astrolabe. Remember, he wrote this work for his son, Louis Chaucer. We had already mentioned that Chaucer lived during the reign of three powerful rulers. Who were they? Three powerful rulers. Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. So let's see how these people really treated Chaucer. So Edward III granted Chaucer a gallon of wine daily for the rest of his life, probably for his early poetic work. So recognizing Chaucer's talent as a writer, Edward III granted him wine. And Richard II granted him an annual pension of £20 in 1394. So Richard II granted a pension of £20. And Henry IV renewed the grants assigned by Richard. Henry IV increased the amount that, those 20 pounds he increased when he came to reign. By Henry IV. Edward III, Richard II, Henry IV. Born during the time of Edward III, lived during the time of Richard II, and he died when Henry IV ascended the throne. Chaucer died of unknown causes in 1400. So he passed away in 1400 of unknown causes. So some say he was murdered by the agents of the king, but there is no point to substantiate that idea. So we can simply conclude that he died of unknown causes around 1400. And two other early books written by Chaucer were Annelida and Arcite. Annelida and Arcite, The House of Fame. The House of Fame, and another work, Annelida and Arcite. And Chaucer translated Boethius' work, Consolation of Philosophy. Boethius' work named Consolation of Philosophy was translated into English by Geoffrey Chaucer. And he also translated, during his French period, he translated the work The Romance of the Rose. The Romance of the Rose, written by the famous French writers Guillaume de Loris and Jean Dimon. Guillaume de Loris and Jean Dimon's work, The Romance of the Rose, was translated from the French language to English by Geoffrey Chaucer. Now let's see what J.L. Laws has got to say about Chaucer. So as per J.L. Laws' version, according to J.L. Laws, Chaucer found English a dialect and loved it a language. So J.L. Laws says that Chaucer found English only as a dialect, not that much developed language. So he found the dialect English and he transformed the dialect into a language. So he transformed the status of the dialect into a language, as said by J.L. Laws. Edward Albert calls Chaucer the earliest of the great moderns. So Chaucer is the earliest of the great moderns according to Edward Albert. And Chaucer wrote in the continental accentual syllabic meter. It was an alternative to the alliterative Anglo-Saxon meter. So Chaucer changed the alliterative Anglo-Saxon meter and they came up with this idea of another kind of meter, that is the continental accentual syllabic meter. Chaucerian rhyme royal stanza. And he invented the rhyme royal, as we had already mentioned. And he helped to standardize the London dialect of the Middle English language. So the London dialect of the Middle English language was standardized by Chaucer. Now some of Chaucer's works were not completed. So incomplete works. His incomplete work, especially the work, the Troilus and Cressida. Troilus and Cressida was completed by Robert Henryson. So Robert Henryson's work, Testament of Cressida, is a completed version of the story of Cressida, left unfinished in his Troilus and Cressida. So Chaucer's work was Troilus and Cressida, and which was an incomplete work. So this work was completed by Robert Henryson through his work titled Testament of Cressida. So Robert Henderson's work, Testament of Cressida, is a completed story version of the Cressida story left unfinished in Chaucer's work, Troilus and Cressida. The Canterbury Tales was selected by William Caxton to be one of the first books to be printed in England. So when William Caxton in 1476, William Caxton introduced the printing press in 1476, and when he came up with his idea of introducing a printing press, one of the first works, or we can say the first work from England to be published was the Canterbury Tales at the Westminster Press. Now look at the next idea. The first recorded association of Valentine's Day with romantic love is believed to be in Chaucer's work, The Parliament of Fowls. We celebrate Valentine's Day on February 14th. So the first mention of such a celebration was in Chaucer's work, The Parliament of Fowls. We will discuss these works in detail. So just remember, the first recorded association of Valentine's Day with romantic love is believed to be in Chaucer's work titled The Parliament of Fowls. John Lydgate referred to Chaucer within his own text, The Fall of Princes. So John Lydgate's work was The Fall of Princes, and in this work he calls Chaucer as the lodestar. Lodestar means guiding principle, the guiding principle of our language. So as per John Lydgate, Chaucer is the guiding principle of our language. So John Lydgate says this in his work, The Fall of Princes. The Fall of Princes, John Lydgate's work. And in this work, he calls Chaucer as the lodestar of our language. That means the guiding principle of our English language. And I remember one more point. Frederick James Furnivall founded the Chaucer Society in 1868. In 1868, Frederick James Furnivall founded the Chaucer Society. Now let's remember the main works written by Chaucer. First of all, the translation of Roman de la Rose. Then the book of the Duchess, The House of Fame, Ranelida Anaside, The Parliament of Fowls, then a translation of Poetis' work, Consolation of Philosophy. So when Chaucer translated it into English, he titled this work as Boys. Then Troilus and Cressida, then the Legend of Good Women, then the Canterbury Tales, a treatise on astrolabe. So you should remember the works. First of all, translation of Roman de la Rose, the Book of the Duchess, The House of Fame, and Lidanasite, the Parliament of Fowls, translation of Poetis' Consolation of Philosophy under the title Boys. Then Troilus and Cressida, The Legend of Good Women, The Canterbury Tales, a treatise on the astrolabe. So that's all for today. In the next class, we will discuss the book, The Epic of Gilgamesh.